Hello, Night Nation. I'm Trylko from the Sons of UCF, joined by Eric Lopez of the Black and Gold Banneret. Welcome to Around the Kingdom. Elo, hello.
Hello, Trace. Coming up on the fastest and angriest Around the Kingdom show. UCF football. Spring game no longer? Oh, the outrage from Trace. We're going to hear about it. UCF without a spring game. Basketball. UCF loses a heartbreaker to Kansas. Did they get shafted by the whistle? That and much more coming up on this edition of Around the Kingdom.
Or lack of whistle, Elo. Before we get going with all of that, let us welcome in the third member of our team. He is Adam Eaton from the Sons of UCF. Keeps an eye on the clock. Keeps us on our toes. Adam, hello.
Gentlemen, good evening. A lot of close calls lately. I'm hoping you two will respect the buzzer tonight. You two respect the whistle of the end, the sounder, okay? Because I've had a lot of close calls lately. I need some help here.
Well, we'll see about all of that. All right, Elo, we begin. As we do always, UCF football, month or so away from the start of spring camp, but I feel an anticipation ratcheting up amongst Night Nation with the arrival of Scott Frost. He has completed his coaching staff. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Elo, what are some realistic expectations going into 2025 for Scott Frost 2.0?
I think there's expectations. I will always believe in a football team in the state of Florida, the expectation should be at a minimum to make a bowl game. Like I think the thing that gets undervalued is the fact that you go 4-8 last year. I don't care what excuses you come up with. That's a disgrace. So I think try to make a bowl game. I think it's a fair expectation despite a lot of new faces. But I think also maybe some better quarterback play, at least hopefully, you hope with this new regime.
4 quarterbacks last year, Elo, not an injury that caused any of them to come out of games, right? I mean, that can't possibly be repeated. I think it's a fair expectation on the part of Night Nation to be enjoying games more. Maybe they don't win more games, but I think Scott Frost has brought a fresh breath of fresh air here and an enthusiasm back into UCF football. So I think enjoying games, seeing them play hard, seeing them get the most out of the talent that they have on the field, I think that's a fair expectation.
But you don't think 6 wins is doable? I mean, you got Jacksonville State, North Carolina, A&T. That's 2 wins right there. You protect your home field there. You can get to 6. I'm not suggesting this team is going to be world beaters, but I think 6-6 is doable, no?
I think it is doable. I think beyond that, though, you're really stretching your expectations. Let's see if they can protect the home court. It shifts back, right? 4 games in the Big 12 at home, 5 on the road. They go out to Provo. They're back to Lubbock. So some tough road trips. Going to have to win games at home.
And what you hope is that with the combination you have on the defensive coaching staff, that you could be better there on that side of the ball, more consistent. You saw some glimpse last year, but not good overall. So we'll see. And maybe some more consistency with the offensive play calling. Of course, for the offense to be consistent, that's going to depend on having one, maybe preferably one quarterback throughout the year. No word more than 2, certainly not 4, but that's what UCF has currently right now. The question is, though, Trace, can UCF win with this quarterback roster?
I'm curious to see what the return of Mackenzie Milton now as quarterbacks coach means, as well as a new look for the Scott Frost offense. So, I think we built up our expectations a year ago with KJ Jefferson. The good thing about the expectations game this year Elo, is that we're not overboard in this, right? So there's a chance to surprise, but I agree with you with a change at running back without having RJ Harvey, a little more pressure now on quarterback play, just some more consistency, maybe a clear number 1 who holds on to the job. That would be a good start.
Well, listen, after last year, I'm out of the business of predicting quarterbacks with KJ Jefferson blow up.
Well, you've not penned your new article on
no, never again.
Heisman.
I learned my lesson. I was wrong. What I will say this, though, is Jackson, the transfer from Indiana, he's a talented quarterback, highly touted recruit that could fit Scott's system. McKenzie's familiar with him. I do think there's opportunities there. Dylan Risk did show some signs last year. I don't know if he's the long-term answer, not certainly in Scott's system, but we've seen Scott develop quarterbacks before, not just at UCF, but other places too. So that gives me optimism. I mean, listen, remember, in 2016, in his first year, he started Justin Holman. It was a Justin Holman, Mackenzie Milton. That was not Hall of Fame, All-American great Mackenzie Milton quarterback. That was a freshman Mackenzie Milton. that they won 6 games. Defense was a factor in that. I understand that, but I think they get the most of what they have at the quarterback position. I think the question here, Trace, is how many of these quarterbacks on the roster have a realistic shot to win the starting job? Is it 2, 3? How many? I think that's an interesting question we're going to have to follow.
Well, we don't seem to talk about Shakari Brown very much, and
Who
there's
Scott Frost
opportunity.
recruited.
Right. So there's opportunity for him to do something in the offense, if not emerge as starter. So bottom line for you, Elo, reasonably optimistic about the quarterback situation going into spring camp in a month?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yes.
We'll see.
Well, spring camp expected to begin the first week of March, Elo, but spring game, perhaps not. The Orlando Sentinel, Matt Michelle, talking about some possible changes to what we've come to know as the spring game. Maybe not a showcase to put your players on a stage in which they can be scouted and recruited by other teams. So maybe a change in that. Maybe we'll see something else, drills and competitions. Probably not going to see Pegasus running against any players, though, maybe. What do you think?
Oh, no. What are we going to do, Trace? Oh, no more spring games. Please, give me a break. Hallelujah. Move on with our lives. I would rather them have an open practice or scrimmage where fans or especially the media, with all due respect to us, our fans and the audience, we're selfish here. I would trade that in a moment, Trace. Would you not? Would you not trade? Hey, we don't have a spring game in the stadium. And I think part of this too is the towers are being fixed on. If you told me the trade-off is you get to go to practice and check it out or a scrimmage, I would trade that in a heartbeat.
Got to go back to George O'Leary days where you could sit in your lawn chair and watch practice, Elo.
I miss those days. Bring it back. And listen, let me ask you this. If UCF came to you and says, look, you can come and attend practice, but you can't report on it, would you agree to it?
Oh, certainly. Certainly, which is what Florida State does.
That's what they do.
We'll Mike Norvell has done. We'll see how much Gus Malzahn likes that.
But I'm for this. Are you going to miss it? You're not going to miss it, are you? Spring game?
It's not a game. It's not a game. No, and you're right. I would rather see some more practice, scrimmage. Shareholders, donors get to see the scrimmage who may talk more than members of the media.
All right. Well, the whistle has blown here. We don't want to.
We've ignored Adams.
We're not in Lawrence, Kansas here yet. So Scott Frost, of course, has his 2.0 staff. Trace, what stands out about it?
Well, the first announced signing in Mackenzie Milton, I mentioned him earlier. I think that was a clear sign by Scott Frost. Teased it in his opening presser. I like that he retained Sean Beckton as part of the staff. So I like those moves, and I like that there wasn't a go back in time to the 2016-17 era by grabbing coaches. Too much emphasis on that. I think he's put together the best staff that he can. Remember, he's getting his feet wet again after the debacle in Nebraska and the challenges that he faced there. I think if he shows some success with UCF, it may change the type and caliber of coaches that he can bring in.
I'm intrigued by the defensive side of the ball, going with Alex Grinch, but also Mark D'Onofrio, who's both of these guys have a lot of experience. They've had a lot of success. They've also had a lot of disappointments and downward. I'm intrigued by it. This staff, don't you feel like, Trace, in a lot of ways, not all of them, but most of these coaches are kind of like Scott Frost in looking for a redemption, right? A strong fit. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I like that storyline, Elo, of redemption and media relations indicating that maybe in the lead up to the opening of spring camp, we're going to get one-on-ones with the new coaching staff. So it'd be good to get to know some of these guys more and their philosophy and their interaction with Scott Frost. So something to look forward to. Hey, remember that guy, Ted Roof? We hardly knew him.
Your buddy.
My buddy. Here, 8 weeks or so, suing UCF. He wants all his money after being fired, but not so fast. Terry Modger saying, there was a clause in that contract. You weren't really fired. You kind of quit when Gus Malzahn quit. It's an interesting tactic. And Matt Michelle saying the court docket shows this case doesn't go to trial until January 2027, Elo. It's going to be a waste.
It's a waste of time. What a waste of time. Hey, you know what I would do for evidence if I'm going against Ted Roof? Just show him the highlights of all the football games against Colorado. All right, show him the highlights of the Arizona State game. Show him the highlights at the end of the half at BYU. You tell me that guy earns Are you kidding me? That guy stole money. If anybody should be suing is UCF, you should sue Ted Root for the way he treated you, Trace. You have a better argument for a lawsuit.
I would love to somehow be subpoenaed to testify.
I know we have attorneys, I believe, that work here at Sons of UCF that we know people. We can help this for you, Trace.
What do you think, though, of the tactic here by UCF? And stretch it out, maybe get a settlement, maybe end up paying him a little bit less.
Yeah, isn't that the way the world works, right? Eventually, everybody's going to want this to go away. You reach a settlement, and maybe that's the goal from Ted Root's side, is just to get a settlement at what he got to lose. I just hate this, man. It's every time. Let's just sue. Hey, you dropped coffee in your shirt. Sue. Let's sue the company there because you gave me the coffee too hot. I mean, what the heck is that? That's just, people wonder why our society is all out of whack, Trace.
All right. Well, then we'll sum that up and buy some time.
I'm going to sue you for some of the picks you made, prop picks during this show throughout the year.
Next topic, Elo. Buy back some time here.
Buy back some time. Look at that. Now I might sue you for that. Hey, the NFL playoffs through the Super Bowl. Pretty dramatic finish. Over 57 million watched the Chiefs beat the Bills.
Huge crowd, Elo, for that game.
Big audience.
Essentially the Super Bowl, right?
That's correct. I tweeted out that the NFL playoffs way better than the college football playoff. Not even close. Do you agree, disagree?
I reposted your tweet. I liked it. I agreed with it. I think the audiences have shown that they turned the page to NFL playoffs, and the college game was a couple weeks past its expiration date, Elo. I agree wholeheartedly. The mindset of the public is in a different place. College should have stayed in the fall and concluded with playoffs, and that's fine, but concluded right before the heart of the NFL playoffs got underway.
And it feels bigger than life, doesn't it? Like the NFL still feels big and special when you watch. Like that Chiefs-Bills game, you felt it was huge. It was important. It was historic. I never felt that way at any point during the college football playoff, whether it be 12, 4 teams, and that's something they're going to have to deal with. You're going to say maybe time will go, they'll build up, but it was a bad playoff. And again, home field advantage, the environments in home stadiums versus neutral sites, big difference.
All right, time to bring back in Adam at our silly game. Adam, we've ignored you on the.
That's fine. You guys to ignore me, but what you can't ignore is the great deals going on in Alumni Hall, guys. That's right.
True.
Your place to get UCF merchandise, 4100 North Alafaya Trail if you want to visit their store, or alumnihall.com/UCF to find some stuff. New polos, and gentlemen. You can get some new Cutter and Buck polos. Some new gear has arrived, so be sure to check out Alumni Hall. All right, this week's game, gentlemen. I'm going to give you a phrase. You give me a word to describe what I'm phrasing to you. So, Eric, I'll start with you first. Give me one word, or maybe two, to describe Darius Johnson's UCF career.
Rising. He's rising. He's had a heck of a year this year. I think his legacy is changing before our very eyes. If he can continue this in his senior, his legacy is rising.
Grown up before our eyes, and a throwback to a different era. We're seeing a guy with his entire career at UCF, and I've really enjoyed watching him emerge over the course of this season.
All right, Trace, this one for you. This week marks the Senior Bowl. Several UCF players out there showcasing their talents for NFL scouts. So, Trace, give me one word to describe RJ Harvey's NFL potential.
One word, potential. I think he has potential. And I think if he has a good Senior Bowl and the measurables are all there, I think somebody's going to take a chance on him. I've seen some calls here, maybe 3rd round, 4th round. I think he's going to get drafted. And I was a little skeptical of that.
Situational. What's the situation he gets himself into? Is he in a situation where the system benefits him? Is he in a situation where the running back position's wide open? Does he have a good offensive line? I think it's situational.
All right, last one, gentlemen. The Pro Bowl games are coming up this weekend, and as a little treat, UCF gets to actually host some of these events at the Nicholson Fieldhouse on campus. So, Elo, one word to describe the opportunity UCF has to host some NFL events on campus.
Irrelevant? Like, who goes to these? Like, I don't even know how to get into these. Trace can't even get in, and he can get into everything. So if Trace can't even get in, I'm not sure how significant this is. So I'm going to say relevant.
Lucrative. Host anything anybody wants you to host.
You think they're making money? You think they're making money?
Oh yeah, certainly.
How much? How much you think?
Well, I don't know how much, but they're making money. So,
well, why can't we get in?
Have you tried?
I have. You?
I have not tried. Remember, I was on campus the other day, and I got some video of the field house as they were transforming it. So that's I'm good with.
All right, if it's lucrative,
tangent.
I'll take it.
Yeah, any chance UCF has to make some money, that's a good thing. Thank you, Adam. All right, Elo, a chance to knock off Kansas in Lawrence. Fall just short for the Knights, 91-87. They dropped to 4-5 now in the Big 12. Not without a great effort. Keyshawn Hall, Darius Johnson, Mustafa Tiem, so close. They rebounded from that 51-point loss just a couple of weeks ago in Orlando. They gave it all they had.
Amazing game, amazing performance. Keyshawn Hall, 30-plus points, left it on the court. He is having an all Big 12 type season right now, Trace. He should be warranted there with all Big 12. UCF shooting the ball better from the three-point line.
They were firing threes throughout this one. Eli.
Oh, that's the plan. You're an underdog against Kansas. Kansas has the size advantage. The way to beat them is try to, and then you just outshoot them from the perimeter. And it almost worked, a couple plays here and there. But if they can play like this the rest of the way, they're going to be just fine moving forward. I'm thrilled with that performance. 4-5 through this gauntlet of the 9 games, Big 2 home games. I was pleased with it. I know you're not happy about certain whistles called or not called.
Not called. Let's start with the 4-5, though. This is 2 against Kansas, Houston at home, on the road at Arizona, on the road at Iowa State.
At Arizona State, too, by the way, at Texas Tech.
Yeah, and you remember Adam posed this to us. This said us what the 6 or 7 games look like, and you went, geez. I mean, just before this game, hosting TCU, you thought, boy, if you drop that 3-5, lose at Kansas 3-6, 4-5, return home, BYU. But let's talk about the Kansas advantage down the stretch. It was not so much what was called, it was what was not called. Referees swallowed their whistles towards the end, in my opinion. I don't want to make excuses. UCF still had opportunities to win the game, but you're going to face that factor when you play at Lawrence.
Yeah, everybody in the Big 12 would say, yeah, now you're officially a member of the Big 12 because you're not getting calls at Fog Allen. Look, you can't depend on calls there. I know there's some calls. We're going to get into this more in the overtime because I thought Adam has a great perspective on the play with Darius Johnson, whether it should have been a 2-shot foul or a 3-shot foul. I think the one that I have an issue with was more of Mustafa getting called on the hook. But again, you can't depend on calls, not in that environment. I thought Johnny Dawkins explained it well on the radio. I just think there was a lot of positives in this game that you can move forward. And I don't want to dwell on officiating that you knew, quite frankly, they were going to get calls in the game. But
I'm not blaming officiating. And it is a factor that you're not going to get those kind of calls on the road. And remember, UCF had a lead, as much as 9. To spring the upset, you can't find yourself close like that, needing a call. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Well, the reason they had a shot, it's the offense scoring 87 points in Fog Allen, 14 threes for UCF in this game, coming off a red-hot shooting performance against TCU. UCF averaging 80 points a game, the most by far in the Dawkins era. Trace, not only the question is this the best offense in the Dawkins era? I don't think that's a question. The question is this the best UCF offense in basketball history?
In basketball history, that is a lofty. Do you consider your Torchy Clark era teams to be a part of that? Or are you just talking modern era? I mean, certainly for the Dawkins era, this is the most. If they could just get a little bit more defense, right? We talked about that stat last week. They lost by 25 at Iowa State. They scored 83 in that game. Remember, I asked if they'd scored 83 points last year, and Adam came back with, they would have won, 9, 10, 11 games more if they'd scored that many points. Yeah, certainly is the most in the Dawkins era, and it feels like overall, certainly.
I don't recall a UCF team that had 3 guys that can light it up scoring-wise, like Hall, Darius, and Curry can. And
don't sleep on Mustafa.
Mustafa's becoming an offensive weapon as well, and that's all without Jalen Sellers. And nobody's even bringing him up that we're missing him. Even the 19 team only really had 2 consistent offensive guys in BJ and Aubrey. I know these guys are not always consistent together, but boy, they can light it up in bunches. And Keyshawn Hall is having a historic year. And if he keeps this up, Trace, I think he's the UCF Male Athlete of the Year, not RJ Harvey. We'll get to that. I have a feeling down the road. Oh, that's a tease down the road, maybe. There.
I like that one. You convinced me of something on last week's show. I had said, boy, it's too early for bracketology. You go, aren't you the same guy that talks bowl predictions in the spring? So you've sold me on bracketology. What does the loss now, Elo, at Kansas mean? Quality loss, quad 1 loss? Help me through where UCF stands in the bracketology and what's going to be needed to nudge them over into this tournament?
Well, in most places they're right now last four in. Boy, if you win the Houston game or the Kansas game, I think you're clearly in at that point. Look, I think if UCF can get to 10-10, you've said this, Trace, 10-10 in the Big 12, which is the strong league, that should be enough to make the tournament. But right now, they still got a lot of work to do. These next two home games are so critical against two teams that have gotten your number. BYU beat UCF 3 times last year. Cincinnati beat them twice. Think about it. If you go 3-2, 4-1 in that 5-game stretch last year, maybe UCF's one of the last 4 in last year and makes the tournament. I think it's similar this year with those two games. They got to build on this Kansas game and the TCU game. That had to be encouraging, Trace, seeing them destroy TCU.
Yeah, well, you got to take care of the teams that you're supposed to beat. Of course, it didn't help TCU to go 1 of 20 from 3 in that one, Elo.
Of course, Kansas is coming off one of the most wildest games of the year, losing a double overtime game against Houston where they led by 6 with 17 seconds to go. Only to follow that up with Monday night, Arizona beating Iowa State in overtime thanks to a Caleb Love 3-point shot at the buzzer from about 70 feet. Wild times here in this Big 12, Trace, which is what makes this league so exciting.
It certainly does. I mean, these are exciting games, and you follow the TV ratings. That Houston-Kansas game was a ratings winner, right? I mean, for the Big 12, a lot of exposure on that game. Late night slot for that Arizona game, but you've got Arizona coming into the Big 12. That was a power team anyway, right? A welcome addition to the Big 12, made the league that much stronger. Game in and game out, this is tough. They're going to have some teams that are going to go right to the end here contending for this Big 12 title.
Houston, right now the favorites with Iowa State, and Kansas probably number 3 on that team. They got to get DeJuan Harris back. He missed this game with an injury, turned his ankle. Then you've got Baylor, who is a team UCF will see. BYU, those teams are right in the middle. Texas Tech, that's where UCF is. Arizona State. How many is the Big 12 going to get this year? A lot of the projections have them at 8. Can they get that to 9? Who knows? But, man, this league is just topsy-turvy every week. You just never know. Arizona State goes to Morgantown and wins against West Virginia. You just never know in this league.
Is that 8 include UCF, or UCF could be a 9th?
I think UCF right now in most places have them as the 8th team from the Big 12. They have a win against Arizona State. That's one of the other bubble teams. But that's what makes this BYU game big. BYU's in the bubble as well. So that's what every game in the Big 12 matters a lot moving forward here to put yourself in position to make the tournament.
All right, switching gears now on our prop bet, Elo. Well, you were quick to fire off that I lost last week's. I like how I forget what it is, and you're like, no, you lost.
Well, you were cocky. I said last week the attendance over-under for TCU is 8,500. You're like, oh, over. The student section will be flowing, and no problem. So what
I forgot about Gasparilla, and that a lot of students would be over.
Was that what it was? Okay.
Well, that's apparently the talking point.
All right, I'm going to give you another chance to atone for that. We got BYU, big game, Saturday, February 1st, no more football. Over under 8,800 for BYU.
Well, I'm curious to see what it means with this 4 o'clock time slot on Saturdays and whether the fans like it. But I think fans are juiced by the performance, even in a loss at Kansas. Showed heart, a big rebound from that loss that they had a couple of weeks ago at home to Kansas. I say over. You're going to take the under? You're doubting? I'm going to go over again.
I hope I lose. I think it should be over, but I'm like you. I'm very intrigued. This team deserves this support. And you want to win Big 12 home games. You saw how home court advantage can make a difference in Lawrence, Kansas. As Johnny Dawkins mentioned, you're not going to get certain calls in an environment like that. How about we return the favor in our own? My only issue is let's get our calls at home that way. That's my thing.
All right, let's talk game within the game, which is the fun game that we play. You were in last place, Elo. You took Keyshawn Hall. You get 5 points for that. Adam with Darius Johnson, he got 3 points. Ivy Curry, that's who Andrew took. He had the second pick in this one. He ends up with the least amount of points. How about Mustafa falling to me with a 4th pick, Elo, and 17 points against Kansas? Season to date now, I've got 24 points. Adam's got 23. You've got 22. Andrew Trylko brings things up at the end there at 19 points. You got to like this game, though, right? Nobody's really out of it. Game in and game out. You bounce around here.
Trylko's been pretty quiet after talking smack at the beginning of the year. I'll tell you that. Beginning of Big 12 play.
That's it's good stuff, Elo.
Very good stuff. Hey, there's another sport about to start, Trace. Baseball, softball. Let's go into that. All right, because we don't need to embarrass Adam anymore on the
We'll embarrass him on the Kingdom.
All right, let's give him a night off. Let's give him an episode there in the overtime. But baseball and softball, Big 12 preseason polls came out. Both picked 7th in the polls. Your reaction to that?
First of all, it means nothing, right? It is the coaches, I think, or their SIDs, perhaps making the picks. I don't think it means anything, but I think if you're UCF in both baseball and softball, you're fine with it, right? You need all that material that you can to fire up your team. Hey, they're disrespecting you. They don't think you have a chance. I think it's fine. You talk softball for a little bit. How bothered are you by it? This is a transitional year, a reloading for softball after losing so many well-known seniors.
It is. So I'm not surprised they were picked 7th. I mean, it was very close voting between them, BYU, and Utah. It's a very young team. No players in the preseason all-conference. I could tell
that surprised me a little bit more.
Yes, it's a little, and I think, trust me, Coach Ball Malone made sure to remind those players of that as soon as they got word on that. That's definitely a bulletin board material. I'm with you, though. I don't think it matters. Remember, people forget baseball was finished 8th in the Big 12 last year and made the NCAAs, made the regional final. That's the beauty of it. When you play in a strong league like this, you could be finished in that middle of the pack and still make the NCAA tournament. I know I had a lot of people ask me about softball. What does this mean about the tournament? If UCF, I think, to me, feel good about it, if you get in the top 6, you're probably going to make the tournament. I think the Big 12 is a 6 to 7 bid league, so you're right there on the bubble, which is kind of where UCF was a little bit last year. But look, they got a lot of youth. They got something to prove. It seems like both teams got something to prove. But I think both Rich Wallace and Cindy Ball Malone are not too hot and bothered about it. If anything, I think they like that fact that there's a little bit of a, hey, we're kind of an afterthought in some minds, in some people's mind.
And I think with baseball, it's do it again. Show me you can do it again. And I think both programs, well, really all the programs at UCF, earn your place in the Big 12. Show me what you can do. You know what you did in the American. Show it in the Big 12. So I'm not bothered by it at all. Media days for both sports coming up, but we'll have more about
Let's go.
That. Yeah, it's close, CeeLo. All right, time to bring back in Adam. What did we get right? What did we get wrong? Educate us, Adam.
I appreciate the reprieve on the stats there, gentlemen. Okay, so according to something called LegalSportsReport.com, the 2025 win total for UCF football set at 7.5 right now. I don't know
7.5.
I don't know how realistic that is. Again, LegalSportsReport.com.
Bowl game eligibility there, Adam.
Check that out, my friends. Elo, a little history lesson for you. You talked about frivolous lawsuits. I'll introduce you to Stella May Lieback, who in 1994 sued McDonald's for hot coffee and won $2.7 million in punitive damages. You were talking UCF basketball. They lead the Big 12 in conference play in three-pointers made a game at 10.2. Also, only conference games, Keyshawn Hall through the 9 conference games, leading the Big 12 in scoring at 21.4 points a game. UCF has played now 7 games rather, against 6 teams in the top 25. They are 2-5 in those games right now. And Elo, you are correct. Joe Lunardi currently has UCF as the 8th team in from the Big 12.
If I'm not mistaken, this is Keyshawn Hall's, is it 9th or 10th game with 20 or more points this season, Elo.
It is.
So,
oh, wait, Trace, make sure, Trace, can you spill coffee on me when we hang out this weekend?
Well, you think you're getting $2.5 million from me?
I'll get something. I'll get something.
One more thing before we go, Elo. Another block party Saturday outside the arena in between the hoops doubleheader. Women's game at noon, men versus BYU at 4. Check things out outside the arena. The block party, the newest one coming from UCF. Look for new episodes midweek, every week on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. And also, we drop this show on the Sons podcast feed, where you'll also find Around the Kingdom Overtime. For Eric Lopez and Adam Eaton, I'm Trace Trylko. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for this week's Around the Kingdom.